It's about that time once again. The top 10 weakest series is back, and we're feeling the cold sadness of hard steel this week. Last time, it was all about the hard, harsh reality of the jagged rock types. And if you thought it couldn't get harder, well today, it certainly does. We've got everything today in what was a very difficult list to put together. We even have a Pokemon that was on the top 10 strongest list of a different typing. As a matter of fact, a good portion of this top 5 was on last week's list. So that honestly remains more of a condemnation to the rock typing than the steel types. So, with the stage set, let's get into these top 10 weakest steel types. We kick off today's list with a Pokemon that was at one time the gold standard for rapid spin users in the competitive scene. It's honestly not even that bad of a Pokemon, but due to the high standards the steel type is held to, it had to open up this top 10 worst list. I'm talking about Fortress. Once upon a time, the face of rapid spin that by Sun and Moon started to fall behind different Pokemon that ordered a little offensive presence alongside the setup of hazards and ability to remove them. Now, that being said, defensively, Fortress still has a hard time being outclassed. It has 140 defense and a typing only weak to fire, so it can sponge hits pretty well. However, the special defense, being base 60, that's not good. That's actually what sold out Fortress and left me needing to put it here in this spot, as not even its sturdy ability can save it from special Pokemon. I also think it's worth mentioning Fortress isn't in Sword and Shield, and thus doesn't get a speed boost from using Rapid Spin, so its bad speed is something that can be improved. When we look at its moves, it can set up hazards like spikes and stealth rocks, and Rapid Spin of course can clear hazards from your side of the field. It can pivot about with Volt Switch, which is a great move it has offensively, though beyond that, it's got Toxic I suppose, which can be used to stall or scare something off. But that's really it. Yes, there is Gyro Ball, but the usage of that really leans into the actual problem here. Fortress is too slow. It's still a Pokemon with a good typing and defense, but with its speed being so poor, there are definitely Pokemon that can get around its strengths and absolutely punish it. Like I said, back in the first few generations, Fortress was an OU Pokemon that did a ton of good things. But in the modern day, what it does is done better by other Pokemon, and with more variety to their offensive movesets. So, moments ago in the intro, I mentioned we've got a Pokemon on this list that was on a top 10 strongest list of a different typing. Well, that Pokemon is Alolan Sandslash. And give me an opportunity to explain why it's here today. See, it is right now one of the top 10 Ice-type Pokemon. I will stand by that, but I feel this should be said. The Ice type is one of the absolute worst typings in Pokemon, while the Steel type is one of the best. So while Alolan Sandslash can be seen as a good rapid spinner with a few strong moves as an Ice type, it's seen as a mediocre spinner with a bad typing when talking about it as a Steel type. Hopefully you guys can understand that. So Alolan Sandslash has base 100 attack and 120 defense, both pretty good, and base 65 speed that can be brought up with the use of Rapid Spin. It's able to set up hazards and spin them away like I've brought up enough already. Its typing altogether is actually not awful, except it has a big weakness to fighting and of course fire. Its special bulk just isn't great. Its move pool has some moves that definitely work alongside what we've already spoken about, like Icicle Crash, Knockoff, Earthquake, stuff like that. They're moves that can be used. Its access to these moves though don't save it from simply not serving its role as a Steel type all that well. It can flourish in a lot of battles, but it's a victim of this typing being so good. Let's get going next with Togethermaru, the number 8 entry on the list. Its electric steel typing is obviously not one you want in a world where Earthquake is such a prominent move, but it's still in a spot where we can talk about some redeeming qualities. So, for one, Togethermaru has nice speed, being a steel type, base 96. It's actually the second fastest Pokemon on the list today. Its physical prowess is pretty decent at base 98 too. Honestly, Togethermaru is probably one of the best attackers on the list. However, being a great attacker, well, its defenses, as I said, are a problem combined with the typing. It can't take hits, and thus it needs to outspeed and attack when given the opportunity, making it a popular Choice Scarf user. It can get in and out of battle with U-turn. It's got Zing Zap and Iron Head, which are basically the same move for its two stabs. And hey, you know, it has Wish, and that can recover some health. though it taking 2 turns isn't exactly ideal. Togethermaru has some potential in the lower tiers, and is better than a lot of the Pokemon coming after it, though I'd say we're almost at the point where the Pokemon we're talking about can't be considered even slightly good. We've got a couple of Pokemon out of Galar in the next 2 spots, and this time we're starting off with Galarian Stuntfisk. This was a Galarian form that I'm sure caught a lot of people off guard when it popped up in Sword and Shield, and its stats served to turn Stuntfisk into more of a physical Pokemon. Its speed is still absolute garbage, of course, but as a defensive Pokemon, it's really good. Like, it can take hits on both ends rather decently, and setting up Stealth Rocks is a decent usage for it. Its typing can change up too with its Mimicry ability, which changes the typing depending on the terrain, so it's not always going to be a Steel Ground type. It can use Stab Earthquake for good damage, and it can set up Curse. So really, there's plenty of ways to get something out of this Galarian form. Who doesn't love a little Snap Trap? The only big problem with Stunfisk is that speed, and the fact that its attacks won't do too terribly much. There really isn't a lot left to say, quite frankly. It's clear why it's on this list, and it's clear why it's ahead of the other Pokemon. It's very middle of the pack here. So, the other Galarian Pokemon we have got here is another Pokemon I'm sure really surprised some people when it debuted, Persecutor. This thing suffers from a lot of the same problems multiple Pokemon on this list suffer from: poor speed and bad special bulk. Its defense and attack are alright, and its abilities Battle Armor and Tough Claws can see some usage. Its Steely Spirit ability might even be the best if spamming Iron Head is your idea of a good time. However, again, that speed is a major detriment to the success of Persecutor, and it honestly doesn't have much in its move pool to help offer coverage outside of Seed Bomb or close combat. There's definitely some stuff you can see on screen here, but not as much as you'd want. I don't have too much to say this time around about Persecutor, so I'll end it off here. But leading into the top 5, this is definitely the final Pokemon I'd consider to still be redeemable. The next 5 all have some issues that really play into them being on this list that go beyond just being slow. When all things are taken into consideration, our number 5 Pokemon today doesn't seem like it should be on this list, and yet, here it is. During the 7th generation, I think Klinklang might have been able to completely avoid the list, maybe open it up at number 10. But things have seemingly changed for it. Its typing leaves it weak to the general still weaknesses, but it has Magnet Rise, which wipes the ground weakness out off the bat. And then its stats really aren't that bad. 90 base speed is one of the best of the day, and its physical stats are nice too. It can be set up with Shift Gear, and moves like Wild Charge and Gear Grind will make the most of the attack. Now, therein lies the problem. Klinklang, it can't handle taking too many attacks from special attackers, and it also lacks true coverage in its pool. It has Stab and Wild Charge, but that's it. The rest of its move pool lacks big time. And last I checked, there are Pokemon that can tank Steel and Electric moves. Its abilities don't help much at all, as Plus and Minus are garbage, and Clear Body only prevents stat drops. I don't have much else to say about Klinklang, other than it's probably the poster child of Pokemon being screwed by having bad move pools. It shouldn't be in the top 5, and yet it is, because it can do nothing beyond the bare minimum, even if it does that super well. Perhaps in a future generation, Klinklang will be given better moves. So coming up next, we have our first carryover from the last list, Probopass. Its magnetic nose makes a second appearance this time, and it probably serves as the best indication that the steel typing is actually very good. See, it was the number 10 Pokemon on the rock list. Thus, it was just on the cusp of being good enough to not be considered one of the worst. However, here, it's very clearly one of the worst steel types, as it made it into the top 5. The only real positive thing I can say is Probopass has some massive defenses, 145 in physical and 150 in special, which plays in well with its great defensive typing in regards to resistances. It has access to Sturdy as well, which is always nice on a Pokemon like this, as despite the many resistances, it still carries a big weakness to fighting and ground type moves, or in some cases only fighting moves if you use Magnet Rise. Its HP isn't great though, and its speed is so horrible. However, when it comes to taking a hit or two, it's more than prepared to do that, especially on the special end. I mentioned Sturdy as an ability a moment ago, and Magnet Pull is in some ways even better when dealing with strong steel types. But it comes down to what works better with your team or the format you're playing. So how about offensively? Well, its stats there are not being great, being 55 physical and 75 special, though I guess at least the latter can be somewhat usable. Really, I'd recommend just using Probopass to do things like use Taunt or set up Stealth Rocks, as the hits it can take against non-fighting and ground-type Pokemon allow it to make the most of those moves. It has Flash Cannon as probably the best move in its pool that it can really take advantage of. The other options include Earth Power, Hidden Power, Thunderbolt, and Dazzling Gleam. There is potential for Probopass in certain battles, but it definitely just falls into the category of not worth using, and thus appears as one of the worst Steel-type Pokemon. Unfortunately, the standards are just a lot higher for Steel types, at least higher than they were with the rocks. Here we are in the top 3, and we kick it off with the Alolan form of Dugtrio. Its defenses are very bad, which is the number one thing it has working against it. The good speed and usable attack is completely downplayed by such horrible defenses. Who cares about using Tangling Hair when you're probably outspeeding everything anyway? Look, Alolan Dugtrio has Earthquake and Iron Head, which are probably its best moves, and it can even use Toxic alongside Substitute to attempt to stall out an opponent, though it can't take hits, so what's the point in that? I couldn't tell you. And yet, you can ask the people who put sets on Smogon. This thing sucks. It just sucks, and should hit the gym for some extra bulk. It's offensively better than the next two Pokemon, but just understand, it sucks. You suck, Dugtrio. All three of you. Or are you one? What is the deal with you, Dugtrio? You confuse me. So, taking the penultimate spot on this list is another Pokemon from our last list, Bastiodon. Once again, it's the only fossil Pokemon on the entire list, though there aren't exactly a lot of Steel-type fossils. I recently featured Bastiodon on the worst team for Platinum, and came to find that offensively, it really is as bad as it looks, and its stats show a couple of attacks that are base 52 and 47. Absolutely some of the worst we're talking about today. Its speed is straight garbage too, being base 30, and its HP doesn't contribute much to the bulk, being base 60. Its typing is absolutely awful for it, with no way of erasing the ground weakness unless an air balloon is involved. For Bastiodon, it must deal with both ground and fighting type moves coming its way, which essentially wipes out all the great resistances. Its access to Sturdy is one good thing at least, but one good thing doesn't really cut it. The move pool on Bastiodon is awful, with really the only good set to run on it is one that involves setting up Stealth Rocks. Metal Burst and Rock Slide are both moves worth running, but aside from them, you can't do anything other than give a half-hearted attempt at stalling and setting up hazards. Bastiodon is really bad, and it could have easily been in the number 1 spot here on this Steel list. However, a fellow Pokemon from the 4th generation was way worse. At the very least, Bastiodon's defenses give it something to compete with, even if it is a colossal failure. So, closing out this list, we've got Wormadam. It's the worst Steel type ever, and we're talking the Trash Cloak. Seems appropriate that it's called Trash, right? Now, the Trash Cloak is probably the best defensively, having only a single major weakness to fire, while resisting 8 different typings and being immune to 1, which is definitely not horrible. However, in a duality with the number 10 slot on this list, Wormadam is no fortress. Its offenses are hot garbage, and its abilities are so absolutely underwhelming. Oh hey, look at this, there's no moves. Wormadam may have access to Quiver Dance, but honestly, its move pool doesn't go well with that. That Trash Cloak gets access to Iron Head, and that's cool and all, but Quiver Dance doesn't help that much. Doesn't this Pokemon seem just so good? How could I ever put it at number 1? This whole list, fraudulent. Oh wait, I see now. I can do so because it has no speed, and even with its defenses, it can still be absolutely hammered by a fire-type move, hurt by stealth rocks, and it's easily outclassed by its evolutionary brother, Mothim. There. I said it. At the very least, there's something to be said about the Trash Cloak's ability to take hits, but that's it. This thing sucks. It's the perfect number 1 entry. Talk about useless. That'll do it for another top 10 weakest video. This was rough to actually write and talk about, because the steel typing actually is very good. I believe I framed a lot of these Pokemon in a fair way. The reality is a lot of these can still be used at low tiers to some real success. But unfortunately, we needed 10 Pokemon for this list, even if the steel typing isn't that bad. I expect the same sort of issues on the Fairy and Dragon lists, but we'll handle those when we get to them. Next time, I'm going to imagine we'll be hitting the ground running with a certain typing, but let me know down below which it'll be. I'll be looking. Hey, welcome to my new outro. A big thank you to everyone for watching the video. I want to give a huge thanks to my phenomenal team, and for the amazing art done each week by Danny the Demon. I couldn't do all this without them. If y'all enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Be sure to leave a comment too. It really helps us out. I have a brand new TikTok for MysticUmbreon, and I've got a goal to get 10k followers over there. If we can hit that goal, I'm going to pick a random video suggested to me by you guys and do it. So go over there and leave a follow. Also, over on MysticSage, we've still got 2 videos going up every weekend. We've got content from My Hero, to Demon Slayer, to Dragon Ball, so come and check it out. And also check out MysticSage on TikTok. Finally, I've got an Amazon store where I sell tons of cool stuff. I think I'm gonna wrap this up though. I'm MysticUmbreon, and I'll see you next time with some more amazing Pokemon content.